Chapter 31. Emma. "Can I help with anything?" Emma asked as she hovered near Carrie. "You can get out of my kitchen," Carrie said. "The cake just needs to cool and then I can frost it, but I can't get any of that done if you are constantly in my way." "Emma, why don't you come help us tie flowers?" Kate called from the living room. She had brought over Emma's wedding dress after church, and the two had finished the last of the alterations. With Carrie on top of the cake and William and his sister taking care of decorating the church, Emma had nothing else to do, and she was driving everyone crazy. "Yeah, Emma, come see what my dolls can do." Jenny had been inseparable from the two dolls ever since William had given them to her Friday evening. Unable to pick a favorite, she dragged both with her everywhere she went. "I rather miss such a lively house," Dr. Dixon said, as Emma entered the living room. She had decided to stay a few more days to attend the wedding, though Emma wondered if her decision to stay had as much to do with Doc Moore as it did with her wedding. The two of them had spent most of Saturday sharing medical stories and secret glances. Emma was glad to see her father happy again and hoped their mutual interest might develop into a relationship for him. "How many were in your family?" Kate asked. She wound a scarlet ribbon around the purple sage and tied it in a delicate bow. Emma had decided on scarlet as one of the colors to celebrate Jenny not having the fever. 6, 5 girls and 1 boy. That poor boy. Dr. Dixon laughed as she finished her own bouquet of flowers. "He was also the youngest, and we all took turns dressin' him and motherin' him. It's no wonder he moved out as soon as he was of age." "I don't like it when people move out," Jenny said with a pout aimed in Emma's direction. Her complexion was nearly clear again, though a red line remained across her nose and cheeks where she had been closest to the flowers. "I wish you would stay with us, Emma." "I know, Jenny Bean, but I can't do that. However, you are welcome any time in William's and my house. There are plenty of rooms." "Pretty sure those are for the children he's hoping for," Kate said with a small smile. Emma's face flared as she thought about the night ahead. It wouldn't be her first night sleeping in the house thanks to Jenny's illness, but it would be her first night sharing a bed with William. "Okay, last flower done," Kate said with pride. "Let's get dressed for this wedding." "I'm not quite done yet," Carrie hollered. "I'm on it." Dr. Dixon smoothed her skirt as she stood. "I've been known to decorate a few cakes in my time." As she wandered into the kitchen, Kate, Emma, and Jenny headed to the girls' room to get dressed. Kate helped Emma don the wedding dress first. With the last button fastened, Emma regarded herself in the mirror. The dress now had a high collar of lace. The sleeves bloused out a little more, and lace covered the lower arm from the elbow to the wrist. It wasn't that different from when she'd worn it to marry Joseph, but there were enough changes that she felt it wouldn't be unlucky. She had even added a scarlet trim on the sleeves. "You look beautiful," Kate said. "Now, do you think you could help me get into mine? Hopefully it still fits. I feel like I grow a few inches every day." Emma smiled at her friend. "You don't, and you still look amazing." She helped Kate step into a light blue dress that had recently been let out. The fit was perfect, and Emma was glad they had moved the wedding up so Kate could be a part of it. Carrie entered the room then, her head shaking back and forth. "She better not mess up that cake. I've worked on it all morning." "It will be fine," Emma assured her. "Now get dressed." As Carrie changed into her dress, Kate and Emma got Jenny dressed in her pale pink dress. "You know, you may have to put your dolls down to throw the flower petals," Kate said with a laugh. Jenny's eyes widened and she clutched them to her chest. "I can't let go of them. William gave them to me." "Well, maybe Dr. Dixon or Aunt Mabel can hold them," Emma suggested. Jenny's mouth pursed as she considered her options. I think Dr. Dixon. Aunt Mabel seems nice, but I don't know her very well. Emma bit back her smile, but she had to agree with Jenny. While she had enjoyed meeting Mabel this morning and hoped they would become friends, the woman had been quiet and hard to get to know. Still, she was glad that Mabel and her family had come. She knew it pleased William to have rekindled his connection with her. Kate looked from one girl to the next. Okay, I think we're ready. Let's go get you married. Emma grabbed the basket of petals as she led the way back to the living room. Kate gathered up the sage bouquets, and Carrie hurried into the kitchen to check the cake and get it ready for travel. What can I help with? Dr. Dixon glanced around as she reappeared in the living room. You can help me with the flowers, Kate said. Dr. Dixon grabbed the remaining flowers, and when Carrie appeared holding the cake on a platter, Emma opened the front door. Doc Moore looked up from the chair he had been sitting on. He had offered to stay with them and drive them over in the wagon when it was time. Samuel and Benjamin had gone ahead to the church to help William. At least, Emma hoped they were helping and not being a bother. Are we ready then? Doc Moore asked. I think so, Pa. Emma watched as he helped Jenny up first. The girl let go of her dolls just long enough to climb in and then immediately cuddled them again. He helped Kate up next, holding the flowers for her as she struggled with her growing belly. Emma smiled as she watched him turn to Dr. Dixon and offer his hand. A tiny hint of pink colored the woman's cheeks as she took his hand and climbed up. Then it was Emma's turn. Handing the basket to Kate for a moment, she climbed up and took a seat next to her friend. Finally, Carrie handed the cake to Emma before climbing up front and taking it back. Drive slowly, Pa, Carrie admonished as he lifted the reins. I don't want the cake to fall. Doc Moore nodded and clicked softly. The horses moved, but the pace was almost slower than a walk. Maybe a little faster, Kate said with a laugh. We don't want to miss the wedding. No, Emma certainly didn't want to miss it. She couldn't believe it was actually going to happen. So many things had gone wrong this week, but now she was on her way to the church, and in a few hours she would be Mrs. William Cook, and she couldn't wait. William stepped back and admired the handiwork. White tulle and scarlet ribbons hung from the sides of the pews and from the altar up front. Buckets, which would hold the sage bouquets the girls were bringing, lined the aisle. William was no decorator, but he thought the church looked nice. You did a wonderful job, Mabel said, coming up behind him. He turned and smiled at his half-sister. Thank you for helping. I'm so glad you could make the trip. I'm glad we were too. And again, I'm sorry for all the years we lost, William. He took her hands and stared into her eyes. I am too, but at least we have the future ahead of us. You don't live that far, and we can come visit once or twice a year, and you're always welcome here. Mabel nodded and squeezed his hand before releasing it to wipe a tear from her eye. Hey, there's no crying yet, Jessie said as he approached. Save it for the wedding. Speaking of which, shouldn't people be arriving now? As if he were prophetic, the doors of the church opened and their neighbors and friends began filing in. Thankfully, Pastor Lewis had announced the wedding in church that morning, and William and Jessie had ridden to the houses of those not in attendance to invite them as well. William hoped that most would come, for he felt like the town could use a dose of happiness. It had been through a lot in the last year, what with the attacks of outlaws, Pauline's death, and Jenny's scarlet fever scare. It was certainly time to have a little happiness and celebration. Let me show you to your seat before all the good ones are gone. William led Mabel and her husband and son to the front row. Benjamin followed and sat next to Mabel, leaving room for Doc Moore, who would sit after giving Emma away, and Dr. Dixon. Samuel would be up front with William and Jessie. Pastor Lewis stepped out from his office and took his place at the front of the sanctuary. William, why don't you join me up here?
Jesse and Samuel can help seat people."
William did as Pastor Lewis asked him, expecting the pastor to have more to say to him. But the man said nothing, just stared out over the filling church. William followed suit, his nerves coiling and tightening. He had never been one for big gatherings or ostentatious affairs. He would have been just as happy to marry Emma in a barn with only the pastor there. But he'd wanted to give her as nice a wedding as possible since the planning of it had been so short. A few minutes later, the back doors opened, and Kate and Dr. Dixon popped in, their arms laden with flowers. As they placed them in the buckets, William craned to see if he could spot Emma, but she remained out of his sight. When the buckets were full, Dr. Dixon took a seat next to Benjamin. He smiled as he realized she held Jenny's dolls in her arms. She must have had them on the bottom of her pile of flowers. The piano sounded then, and the back doors opened. Carrie and Samuel entered first, smiling as they made their way up the aisle. When they reached the front, Kate and Jesse began their trek until they too were up front with him. Next came Jenny, her complexion still a little ruddy from the rash, but with a smile nonetheless. She tossed the petals out of her baskets in large handfuls, running out before she reached the front. The music changed to the wedding march then, and William sucked in his breath as he waited for his first view of Emma. It was not a disappointment. She looked like a white angel as she glided in on Doc Moore's arm.
"Who gives this woman away?"
Pastor Lewis asked as they reached the front.
"I do."
Doc Moore planted a kiss on Emma's cheek and then placed her hand in William's before taking his seat.
"Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join these two in holy matrimony. Their engagement may have been short, but in the time these two have known each other, they have faced challenges which have brought them closer together and closer to God."
Pastor Lewis continued, but William didn't hear all the words. His mind was on the future with the beautiful woman in front of him and nothing more.
"William, do you take Emma to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, through sickness and in health, for better or for worse, until death do you part?"
The mention of his name grabbed William's attention and brought him back to the present.
"I do," he said. "And Emma, do you take William to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, through sickness and in health, for better or for worse, until death do you part?"
"I do," Emma said.
"Then by the power vested to me by the great state of Texas, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride."
Applause erupted in the small church as William pulled Emma to him and placed the first kiss as husband and wife on her lips. "I love you, William," she whispered softly as they parted.
"I love you too, Mrs. Cook,"
William said with a smile. Then together they faced the church and grinned as the clapping continued. William knew that whatever life threw at them, they would get through it together with the help of friends, family, and most importantly, God. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a review at your retailer. Just a few words really helps. And be sure to turn the page for a look at Carl's story.